Most men think betrayal starts after the wedding. They're wrong. The real danger begins before she ever says yes. Here's the uncomfortable truth most men never hear. Some marriages don't begin with love. They begin with urgency, a deadline, a fear of being left behind, a quiet panic that time is running out. From the outside, everything looks perfect. The photos, the smiles, the promises, but beneath it all, there's a calculation happening. Not, can I build a life with him? But will this life work? And those two questions lead to very different marriages. Dark psychology teaches us this. When someone chooses you for stability, timing, or security, they don't bond to you. They bond to the outcome you provide. The terrifying part? The man usually believes he was chosen, when in reality he was selected. And the difference between those two destroys lives. Because once the conditions change, so does the love. And that's when men get blindsided. But this is only the surface. The real secret goes much deeper. Here's where it gets darker. Many men aren't the first choice. They're the safe replacement. Before you, there was someone else. The man who triggered her emotions. The man who excited her, but wouldn't commit. So she didn't stop wanting him. She just stopped waiting. Then she meets you. You're consistent where he was chaotic. Available where he was distant. Willing where he was selfish. On paper, you look like the upgrade. Psychologically, you're the consolation prize. And here's the brutal truth dark psychology reveals. You're not competing with another man. You're competing with a memory. A ghost she never finished grieving. A fantasy she never corrected with reality. You can't win against an idealized past. Because memories don't age, fail, or disappoint. You'll feel it too. The distance you can't explain. The affection that never fully lands. The sense that no matter how much you give, something's missing. That missing space isn't about you. It's about who she never truly let go of. And once you understand this, something chilling becomes clear. Time doesn't heal this pattern. It reveals it. Here's the trap that finishes most men. They commit too fast. When the early phase feels perfect, affection is high. Sex is frequent. Future plans come easily. It feels obvious. Why wait? But dark psychology exposes something uncomfortable. Early love is often a performance. Both people are on their best behavior. Both are selling the best version of themselves. And the role can only be played for so long. Men who rush never meet the real woman. They marry the representative. The real person appears later. When comfort replaces effort. When stress arrives. When the mask gets heavy. By then the contracts are signed. Finances merged. Lives entangled. And here's the most dangerous illusion. Chemistry feels like confirmation. But chemistry doesn't test loyalty, resilience, or depth. Only time under pressure does. Time reveals whether she loves you, or loves what your presence provides. And when life applies pressure, that's when the truth surfaces. Which leads to the moment most men never see coming. Most men think money destroys marriages. That's a lie. Money doesn't destroy anything. It exposes it. When resources are flowing, everything feels easier. Affection comes naturally. Arguments seem smaller. Love feels stable. But when income drops, when the job is lost, when the pressure hits, the real foundation shows. Dark psychology calls this a stress reveal. If she married you for connection, hardship pulls her closer. You become a team. But if she married you for provision, hardship feels like betrayal. You'll notice the shift. Subtle at first, less warmth, more distance, more scorekeeping. And then how do we get through this? But why can't you fix this? And that's when men start working harder, longer hours, riskier decisions, not from ambition, but from fear. Fear of losing standing, fear of losing love. Because in transactional marriages, love is conditional. Performance drops. So does acceptance. And once you see that dynamic clearly, a terrifying realization hits. You were never a partner. You were an employee, and employees can be replaced. Here's the most exhausting part of this dynamic. Conditional love has no finish line. Every milestone you hit just moves the bar higher. Earn more, now it's lifestyle. Provide comfort, now it's status. Solve one problem, Another appears. There is never enough. Dark psychology explains why. If her attachment is tied to outcomes, not connection, satisfaction can't stabilize. You feel it as constant pressure, like you're always auditioning, like one bad season could cost you everything. So you push harder, sacrifice more, ignore your own needs. But the affection you're chasing is situational. It appears when conditions are met. It vanishes when they aren't. And the most cruel part? You start believing this is normal. That love is something you maintain, not something you receive. Meanwhile, she's silently comparing. Not out loud, not consciously, but there's a measuring stick in her mind. And it isn't fair, because it's shaped like someone from her past. And no matter what you do, you can't beat a ghost. This is where men start losing their sanity. Because the comparison is silent. She never says it. She might not even realize she's doing it. But everything you do is being measured against a memory. A man who felt more exciting, more dominant, more respected, more alive. Not because he actually was, but because memory edits reality. Dark psychology calls this idealized attachment. The past gets polished. The flaws get erased. The emotion gets exaggerated. And you feel it without proof. You're present, loyal, consistent. Yet something feels off. Her warmth flickers. Her engagement comes and goes. On good days, she's affectionate. On bad days, she's distant. Men think these are mood swings. They're not. They're conditional presence. She's fully there when her internal scale feels balanced. She withdraws when it doesn't. So you start chasing the good days, trying to recreate whatever version of you brought her closer. But here's the trap. You didn't cause the warmth, and you can't control its disappearance. You're reacting to forces you'll never see. And the more you chase consistency, the more inconsistent she becomes, which leads to the most dangerous misunderstanding of all. Men often confuse gratitude with love, and that mistake costs them everything. Early on, she's thankful. She appreciates your effort, your support, your stability. It feels validating. She needs me. She values me. But dark psychology reveals the truth. Gratitude is a response to novelty. Love is a response to bonding. Novelty always fades. What once impressed becomes expected. What earned appreciation becomes baseline. And baseline doesn't generate desire. So the gratitude dries up. You're still doing everything right. Maybe even more than before. But the emotional return shrinks. And now you're confused. What changed? Nothing about your effort. Everything about the dynamic. Because if appreciation was tied to what you provided, once provision becomes normal, the reward disappears. This is when men start feeling invisible, taken for granted, like furniture in their own lives. Still useful, still needed, but no longer chosen. And that realization hurts more than anger ever could. Because now, the fear sets in. If I stop performing, what happens to the relationship? And that fear pushes men into the most destructive behavior of all. This is when men take dangerous risks, not because they're reckless, but because they're scared. The business idea that doesn't add up, the investment that's way too aggressive, the decision to leverage everything on one move. From the outside, it looks like ego. From the inside, it's panic. Panic that he's falling behind. Panic that his value is slipping. Panic that love depends on one big win. Dark psychology shows us something unsettling. Many men aren't chasing success. They're chasing security in the relationship. They believe one more achievement will stabilize things. One more upgrade will lock in her affection. But when the risk fails, when money disappears, when status drops, the very fear that drove the risk becomes reality. The performance declined. The conditions aren't being met, and suddenly the emotional withdrawal accelerates. She becomes colder, more distant, less patient, not because she's cruel, but because the relationship was never unconditional. And now the man realizes something terrifying. He wasn't building a marriage, he was maintaining a contract, and contracts end when they stop being profitable. Here's why divorce blindsides so many men. By the time she leaves, she's already been gone. Not physically, emotionally. Dark psychology calls this a silent exit. She disconnects quietly, stops initiating, stops arguing, stops trying to fix things. Men misread this as peace. She's calmer now. Things finally settled. But silence isn't stability, it's detachment. She's processing the ending privately, talking to friends, rewriting the story in her head, convincing herself she tried. By the time the divorce conversation happens, she's not deciding. She's informing. That's why apologies don't land. Promises don't matter. Sudden effort feels irrelevant. He just found out there's a problem. She solved it months ago. And when men look back, they all say the same thing. There were signs. I ignored them. The distance, the emotional flatness, the lack of shared future vision. It wasn't sudden. It was invisible until it wasn't. And now comes the hardest truth of all. Here's the truth that ends the cycle. Some men are valued for utility, not for who they are. They fix. They provide. They absorb pressure. They make life easier. And somewhere along the way, they confuse being useful with being loved. Dark psychology shows where this pattern starts, often in childhood. Love that had to be earned, approval tied to performance, affection given after achievement. So as adults, these men recreate what feels familiar. They overfunction. They sacrifice. They choose partners who confirm the belief that love is conditional. And then they wonder why they feel replaceable. Here's the reframe that changes everything. Real love doesn't feel like an audition. It doesn't require constant proof. It doesn't disappear when life gets hard. The right partner doesn't measure you against a past, doesn't raise the bar every time you reach it, doesn't stay only while conditions are favorable. She chooses you fully, not because you solved a problem, not because you fit a timeline, but because she can't imagine building life with anyone else. If you have to earn love through endless performance, it was never love. Know the difference. Move slower. Watch actions, not words. And never accept a relationship where your worth depends on what you provide. Because you deserve to be chosen, not just useful.